Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Song That Calls You Home Conversations. Today we have a very, very special guest, a good friend of ours, and also someone who is featured in our documentary, The Song That Calls You Home, and also someone who was present at both of our weddings, and not only was present on both of our weddings, but actually officiated one of them, Mr. Joe Tafur.
Wonderful.
Welcome, Joe.
Hi, Joe.
So
Hi.
amazing to have you.
Great to be here. Thank you both.
So let's start with it's been a while since you participated in our film. Maybe we could start with just a little catch up on what you've been up to since then, and then we
Okay.
could take it from there.
When did you finish production on
So we finished by 2020. So catch us up on
2020?
the last 5 years of your
The
life.
last 5 years. The last 5 years from 2020 was. Is that when it came out? When did it come out? 2020.
It was
At the end.
December 2019.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before
But
the
then,
pandemic.
but
that it
then the
came out.
COVID came
Yeah,
the
the
month
COVID came.
after.
Oh, that
Yeah.
was right around there.
Yeah.
Yeah, when COVID happened, I was already I had towards like 2017-ish, and for that we transitioned. Ricardo started buying out Spita and I
Mm.
from New Edao
Mm.
for about a couple of years process of him buying us our stake out, and we transferred over full ownership of New Edao Centro Espiritual to him,
Mm.
which was, one of our goals. And so we were very happy about that and proud. It was sad to kind of come out of it, but I was spending less time down there in Peru, and it was harder to manage and to take responsibility for what was happening there as a doctor in America without being there. So I decided to like step away and still go and still bring groups and still be part of it and still diet there and learn with Ricardo. And then like around that same time, 2017, 2018, we started the Church of the Eagle and the Condor in Arizona. And so that starting to bring ceremony to North America. So bringing ceremony to North America. And then after COVID, at some point during COVID, they started confiscating a bunch of ayahuasca shipments. It was a strange thing. A lot of people were receiving ayahuasca from Peru, and Chacruna reported, like, I don't remember what year, maybe it was 2020, or around there, they had like 80 shipments intercepted.
Oh, wow.
And so then we had a shipment intercepted as well, and in my name as Ayahuasquero of Church of the Eagle and the Condor. And so then with that, and then they threaten you and that kind of thing and warn you. And so then we decided to sue the government for confiscating our sacrament. So we went through that process in the last 5 years of suing the government on religious, freedom, asking for protection. And so we got it. We got it last year, and we received the DEA exemption.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
That's awesome,
we
man.
received that. So that was a big thing that we did. During that time, I also started getting involved in psychedelic therapy. During the lawsuit, we had to kind of calm down things with the ceremonial activities, and I started getting involved in more work with going through the MDMA therapy training, and then also ketamine training, and then starting to get involved with ketamine retreats and then ketamine work as a doctor with people. Then I also went to the Center for Integrative Medicine. I got a scholarship to do the fellowship there, a 2-year fellowship in integrative medicine, also in like 2021 to 2023. So then I've been involved there at U of A and creating a introduction to clinical use of psychedelics at University of Arizona School of Medicine, and now a similar smaller course at UC Irvine related. So I've been involved in like education and the retreats and then also in that time, I started going to Colombia more. And I met this mutual friend of yours, Jody Goya,
Yep.
Chilean filmmaker who's working on this film project with you all. He was in Costa Rica in like a post-COVID kind of travel era. The Thank You Plant Medicine Conference they were filming for that documentary. What is it called?
Option B.
Option B.
Yeah.
Option B. He was filming there. I met him there. And then he thought, hey, he was doing a program with Sochi Bukuru in Colombia, online thing that blew up during the COVID, and it was bringing traditional healers and occasionally academic people or doctors, together to talk about traditional medicine in Colombia and across the Americas. And so they invited me to be part of that program online, to be interviewed on a panel. And I participated, and then I met Sochi, and I started going to Colombia to explore ceremony with Yahe, with Sochi in Colombia, and learning about the Colombian tradition around ayahuasca. Then I could go visit my family and then go over there.
Yeah.
So that was another thing that developed in these last few years. And then through all of that, and the Church of the Eagle and the Condor, and our relationships to Native Americans, in the United States, and some Navajo elders in Arizona and other elders that have been guiding us. We're kind of part of this movement, exploring, or me really interested in the influence of sacred ceremony and ancestral wisdom on the psychedelic therapy world.
Yeah.
So that's what I've been involved in with the retreats and education, and then eventually writing a book about it.
Yes.
The medicine song, in the spirit of song-related
Absolutely.
media.
There's a lot of song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what I've been doing.
Okay. I know your book very well because I'm doing the audiobook version of it.
Correct.
And which is a real honor. But and I've told you this before, like I love your book. And the first time that I sat to read it, I just intended to read a couple chapters, and I devoured I got to halfway through the book in one sitting. So I'd love to start on a kind of a macro view of everything. You talk a lot about the prophecy of the eagle and the condor and the Pachacuti, and I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about that and what it means, and contextualize it to what's happening today.
Yeah. The prophecy of the eagle and the condor, that there are different versions of the eagle and the condor prophecy from different traditions and different parts of the Americas. Some of them, one of them that's like maybe more popular, and they're all, they're all interrelated, but one is about that in this time that we are in, the cultures of North and South America would start having more exchange again. That that we're unclear, like we were talking about colonization and things like that, but just from a historical, without getting into the motivations for some of what has happened, that we know that there was a huge indigenous population. We know that there was a lot of exchange. We don't know how much, we don't know the interrelationship, the legends of who was talking to who, but the idea that those ancestral cultures would start to reconnect across the Americas. And so there's a lot of people involved in that. And there's these journeys of, I think it's the Peace and Dignity journeys. There's runners that are running, I think, every year. They just happened a little earlier in the spring. Somebody carrying a staff of like eagle medicine, ancestral indigenous medicine from Alaska, somebody from Chile running and meeting. They just met in Colombia last November.
Oh, wow.
That's
So they're the Jornadas de Paz y Dignidad, I think it's called, the Journeys of Peace and Dignity. So those have been going on, and they've been kind of like growing a little bit, and they're trying to this celebration and this bridging that they feel like is important in this time. So another version from Peru, from one of our one of the founders of the Church of the Eagle and the Condor, Rodney Garcia, is a Cuban anesthesiologist who studies with a Peruvian teacher named Don Oscar. I want to say
Miro Quesada?
Miro Quesada.
Yes.
Thank you. So terrible, but
I read the book.
Thank God you're here. Don Oscar Miro Quesada, who is a teacher, a spiritual teacher, and he has his school and has been involved, but he's also somebody that has his lineage kind of teachers, his wisdom keepers that he learned from in the Peruvian Andes and other places. And he's been teaching the version of the prophecy that is related to what he calls the Pachacuti. So the Pachacuti is there's a Quechua term from the Incan, the Quechua language from the Andes of not just Peru, but they speak Quechua in Colombia and Ecuador, and it's again this region.
Mm-hmm.
And Pacha means earth, like Pachamama, Mother Earth.
Right. Yep.
And Pachacuti, kuti means something like turning it over, like Pachacuti, turning over the earth, or one way they talk about is like tilling the earth for the seeds when you turn the soil to plant the seeds. Another one is like shaking the world up or revolving the world, and then according to Don Oscar and his teachers in the Peruvian astrology, they had anticipated these certain periods, and there were the Pachacuti, and there was going to be that they had talked about it in the 1400s that there was going to be a big Pachacuti from the 1490s to the 1520s, and so the emperor of the Incan empire in the 1450s 70s was they named him for the Pachacuti in preparation that this is coming. And supposedly he's the one that built Machu Picchu. And there's evidence, or there's people claiming that. And it's funny because Machu Picchu eventually went into kind of a dormancy, right? I mean, in the post-colonial period. And then it's just like in the 70s and the 80s, it was kind of rediscovered. And then in the 90s and up to now it's become this this world treasure, Yeah. But it was quiet, from that time. And so this Pachacuti period was anticipated, and they said, according to their prophecy, that there's like in the old metaphorical ancient times, mystical times, that there were two paths, the path of the eagle and the path of the condor. And the path of the condor was more considered to be like the path of heart. And so they associated their culture, their Andean culture from the high Andes with the condors around them, with that, path of heart, and the indigenous kind of ancestral tradition, closer to nature, closer to community, closer to spirit, as far as they value more acknowledgement of the divine feminine. And they said then there was another path. They consider the path of the eagle in their tradition, not like eagle in North America, but eagle, like eagle the intellect, and a path of more patriarchal kind of approach and technological and more materialistic. And so they said, well, the eagle is going to clash with the condor and the Pachacuti. So then that was the idea, is that's when the Spaniards arrived. So in 1492, Christopher Columbus landed in the Bahamas, and then all this disease spread all over. And by the time Pizarro, the Spaniard, came to meet the Incas in, I think, 1526, the disease had already killed the emperor. Things were in a little bit of disarray. So by the 1520s, now the Spaniards were there. And so that marks the beginning. And they said there would be 500 years, according to the astrology, of this period where the eagle would dominate the condor. And there would be this period of tragedy and injustice and that, all the things that we kind of are aware of. And so then they said there'll be another Pachacuti in the 1990s to the 2020s. And that in this time, it would be the eagle culture, or that kind of intellectual, technologically oriented, materialistic, supposedly, or we would say one way to think about, Western civilization, at least their approach to Peru or South America, or a lot of, areas, territories, that they would kind of start running out of steam with their increased mental health problems and ecological disequilibrium would kind of force that culture to reevaluate, and like we say, to humble its intellect, to realize that its approach is not functioning well. It's leading to a lot of unsustainable trajectories. And so that they would need to look for help from other cultures. In the same period, the survivors from the Condor path, from the genocide against the indigenous people of the Americas, that they would, still be grieving, their losses from that period, in many cases very resentful and disinterested in sharing their wisdom or their culture or their medicine or their sacred medicine with these other people. But that because of the state of the world and for the sake of the health of the world, that it would be recognized that they do need to share, and that they would start happening. And that in the Pachacuti, the sacred medicines and the plant medicines and some of the ancient wisdom traditions would start sharing their ways
Right.
with other cultures. And so we see that same period, we see this kind of fruition of a lot of, a simple thing of the ayahuasca from the Amazon being shared to from many outsiders, and a growth of that and the spread of ayahuasca out into the world. And similarly, on Iboga, kind of in the same time period, there's still the mushrooms have been shared out of Mexico to the north earlier, but there's more exchange between the cultures, perhaps from the 90s forward. And then in that same period of time of this Pachacuti, the psychedelic renaissance happened. The U.S. had created the war on drugs and had outlawed psychedelic substances, who were in large part had come to Western culture's awareness through interaction with these indigenous cultures. They were learning more and more that, there was more psychedelic substance use most likely in Europe, in the Middle East, and Asia. But at least in the case of Europe, there's reason to believe that was subjugated, that the church kind of eliminated, any evidence of that they had a strict policy about that, and that strict policy was something that was a conscious effort, that when they came to the Americas, they immediately recognized this substance, that substance, we need to eliminate the influence of peyote, of mushrooms, of ayahuasca.
Yep.
And so, that same spirit of like the war on drugs that, was really shut down psychedelic clinical research in the late 60s, early 70s, that was shut down in 1990, it started up again. And they started allowing, the DEA allowed for research with DMT at University of New Mexico, and that led to DEA exemptions for research into MDMA and psilocybin, in that same time period. And in the book I talk about, it's also the same time period when the internet started.
Right.
That in the 90s, it was like, we were living how we were living in high school and stuff, or people like Luis and myself. And then by the time I went to medical school in 1999, like, I didn't have a cell phone when I went to medical school. And email, I didn't really care about it. Wasn't really like, for me at that age, like I just wasn't a big deal. And then it was around that time that by the time I went to residency, even an internship in 2003, 2004, like, you're looking stuff up online in the hospital regularly. Like it happened right at the turn of the millennium. The technology and then the subsequent, what that allowed for in the interaction between the global cultures. Now you're seeing rapidly, the development of technology that could instantly translate, anything.
It's like a quantum leap.
It was a quantum leap.
And was it the Mayan calendar also ended around that time?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, no, the Mayan calendar, there's, all the different reports, but they had said like 2012 or so 2012. So, some people would, so anyways, it's in the middle of the Pachacuti. So, these things are in the thousands of years kind of prognostications, like a year here, a year there, but that it was during this era. And of course, these things are linked to cosmic phenomena, like they're following the stars. So yes, there's been a lot of people that saw this period as a significant period. Like Don Oscar says, an inflection point.
Right.
So then we're at this inflection point. And so then in the book, I explore how during this time period, this interesting time period when the path of the eagle is humbling itself to the path of the condor, and the path of the condor, despite so much heartbreak, is deciding, okay, I have to open my heart again. We have to experience compassion again, and try to build allyships, with people that are coming, hopefully in a humble way, in the spirit of trying to save, what's left of the world and humanity. And so that's what's going on. And then in the midst of that, the psychedelic research is showing how spirituality, how its role in human health. And so in the same sense, science is kind of an example of this path of the ego, humbling itself, or because of the psychedelic research, which is driven by, should be very clearly like understood by everyone. That okay, there's drug enthusiasts and there's people who are interested in getting high, and that's that's been floating around, that movement, for a long time. But the progress that has been made,
Right.
Is based on the treatment of human suffering.
Yeah.
It would never have made the progress. Sure, there's people fascinated by shamanism and Carlos Castaneda and things like that. But the song that calls you home, it was about people going down to Peru for healing.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what made a splash.
Which is a perfect segue into what you just mentioned about the song. So it seems like this theme is not going anywhere, right? I personally feel like we're just, even now, 5 years after the release of the film, just tapping into this idea, like, what is the song? And so what is the song?
The song that calls you home, or this idea of, what is it like, the humbling of the path and the opening up to this other ancestral wisdom, path, which, it's available everywhere, right? There's music everywhere.
Yeah.
There's healing music everywhere. In psychedelic research, like all the big studies, every big study that's making a huge impact, like they were listening to a playlist. A curated playlist was part of. It wasn't put at the forefront of the study because they're just trying to get to the FDA. But there's no question that music was central,
Yes.
in a recorded form, but central to what was going on. So this idea of the music and the song and kind of the heart and soul of a natural essence, that there's something there to connect to through your body, that's not limited to the scope of the mind.
Right. Yeah.
That is true to all of us. And in the song that calls you home, like another little piece of it, at least let's say from the Shipibo tradition, of like, what is the song that they're singing that you all, that you went to and I participated in sharing, that was a song that they learned from nature.
Yeah.
So it's a song from earth. So it's about like, so then, and then you go a step further and talk about like, this is a divine thing, that this is a sacred thing that touches into an essence that is very profound and that permeates like all of life. That the biology is interacting with this and is related to this. So there's some kind of like thing about the song that's about the root, and coming back to the root is about coming back to wholeness. So the song also, like, as it's related to feeling, the song has the capacity to touch the multidimensionality. The song can go into the most extreme, ayahuasca ceremonial experience, back to here, back to being digitized on the voice memo.
Right.
It crosses all the
I like
dimensions.
this way of bridging it like into all the different dimensions. That's really cool. Yeah. Is it like remembering something?
Yes, I think it is like remembering something. It is like, so then, I don't have the quote right, but I try to quote Robin Kammerer from the Braiding Sweetgrass book, and she's like, ceremony is about like calling people back home.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah.
it's helping people belong again.
Mhm.
Like that's the traditional its role.
Mhm.
So it's about remembering, you know, how you belong
Mm.
to this life, to this world, to your experience, to your family, your culture, your life. And so that brings you back to a sense of connectedness. And that
Yes.
connectedness, according to the science and according to what we're learning and according to what a lot of people believe, is just the nature of things.
Mm.
And so that when we
Mhm.
feel disconnected,
Right.
you know, that's a forgetting.
Right.
So we think because this happened to me or because I'm like this or for this reason and that reason, I cannot be part of, you know, the
Mhm.
sacred interconnectedness of all
Yeah.
things.
Mhm.
So
And to
then
bring
that's
it
a
back
healing.
to the eagle and the condor, I think it's really interesting that music was very prevalent in both cultures. Like even in Western culture, music has always been important. Even with like Mozart and Beethoven and
Mhm.
love songs. Things that kind of break through the intellect and bring out kind of an emotional life. Right? It's always
Yes.
connected. It's like heartbreak. People listen to
Right.
music, and it's like
Always.
the one thing that I think stayed constant, even though these two paths were so
Mm.
divergent, right? With the path of the eagle and the path of the condor, but yet music was always there in both cultures,
Right.
you know?
Mhm.
And so even here, like, and this is something I say to people all the time, like we were at this retreat just recently, and it's a retreat that was about these academics exploring ritual and society. You know,
Hmm.
what's the role? Can we bring it back? And one of the people there was a lady that she's Argentinian and you know, maybe it's like you could think of it like a little more Western oriented than like an Amazonian, you know, that kind of culture. And she would say, because then they're talking about intuitive stuff and people on the medicine path and you know the
Hmm.
magic of all that stuff and you know being that kind of person that's visionary and she said, I'm you know the magic doesn't like me, you know, like I'm kind of outside of the magic. And then I could see like getting to know her. Well, she's a very talented guitarist, you know, like she
Mhm.
was singing the whole thing, and she's like a strong athlete. And I said, you know, that's what's funny to me as an American is like in American culture, magic is completely like it's completely allowed. We're allowed to permitted to talk about it in terms of sports and
Hmm.
music. You
Mhm.
know,
Right.
rock concerts and oh my God, we were electrified. You know,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
in the sports, it's always like he's unconscious. Oh my God, like his,
Yeah.
you know, you can cut the energy with a knife
Right.
and it's
Mhm.
just so present like that
Hmm.
type of discussion. But when we get into the academic world or the science world, somehow it's like separate,
Mm.
Hmm.
you know, that it's an area, and they're controlling a lot of the academic thought discussion. So then magic is just so I told her no, like music is magic and sports is magic. She's like, what?
Hmm.
It's like, well, then I'm magic. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I think. You know, that's what I think. And
Mm.
so then that's my big beef is like when I, as a doctor, because of this like enlightenment or this scientific revolution, there that was trying to separate itself
Mm.
from religious kind of thought and like, you know, there was a big tension,
Yeah.
at least in Europe and maybe in other places, where the church was, you know, if you don't believe what they were teaching, if Galileo discovers that the earth is going around the sun or something like Copernicus, whoever it is,
Hmm.
they want to kill him,
Mm.
you know,
Right.
for teaching that. And so then there was this like hard line
Mhm.
that was like that led to Ken Wilber talks about it, just like a splintering, like they just turned their back. It's like we never, you know, separation of church and state, and we
Mhm.
don't want to hear about that. Don't bring that kind of talk over here. You
Mhm.
know, we're protecting ourselves from the charlatans and the mysterious and all that. You know, if there's evidence, sure, if we can prove it, if we can measure it, we can talk about it. If not, we don't want to hear it.
Mm.
So then the problem is that, well, there's a lot of mysterious elements of life
Hmm.
Mm.
that affect our health and well-being. And so if you don't talk about it and you just say you're in denial of those things, then you lose touch with something,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And so within the
Yeah.
Western scientific world, there's that, but then we also see it like in the corporate sector, you know. There's a similar attitude of like, because as you talked about the heartbreak and, you know, and the kind of effort and just how much you have to give of yourself, even in like, let's say, professional sports, for as an example, like that somebody would just burst into tears, you know, on the national stage
Mm-hmm.
over the, you know, them pouring their heart out, you know, and going through whatever they have to go through
Right.
to break through those barriers to really touch the maximum of their potential.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's this idea of vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And so then in the music, you know, to succeed and do well, you have to be willing to go through your vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the same is true and even in sports to a degree. You know, they're going to have to touch parts of themselves that they're going to knock on some doors.
Mm.
Yeah.
And so then, but then, like, that's what I've been saying, like in the academic scene, in the medical scene, in the corporate scene, they've kind of like partitioned off this area of like, no, actually, we don't have to get vulnerable, and we're not going to get vulnerable. And so we're not going there. And I'm not going there. And that's not worth it. And
Right.
what's the point?
Mm-hmm.
And so then there's been this kind of like arrogance
Right.
and pride.
It's like
you
all
know.
ego.
It's all ego,
Yeah.
it's very egoic.
Mhm.
So then you don't, you know, that kind of person isn't necessarily the kind of person that plays the kind of song that everybody wants to hear,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And so
Although I'm sure they wouldn't mind hearing the song themselves.
they wouldn't mind.
right?
No, they go to the concerts and they
right.
go to the other thing,
Yeah.
you know, always.
So there's always like an open door.
There's always an open door, but it's kind of like in a way, like just separated.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they say, oh, I got to put on my scientist hat now.
Right.
Or now I'm going to put on my, oh, I'm also a, whatever, Grateful
Hippie
Dead
enthusiast.
fan. I'm going to go to my festival now. And now, oh, but now I'm
Yeah.
back at the office.
Yes.
You know,
exactly.
so they're like,
Everything's so compartmentalized.
everything's so
right?
compartmentalized.
Yeah.
And so then again, it's limited that way. So,
Now it's interesting though, because you know, and just in thinking of the path of the eagle and the condor, like I know that Newton is referred to as like the last great mystic.
yes.
Okay, so which means that at some point prior to this separation, even Western culture combined spirituality and science. Like there was a period
For
where
most of the time.
right, exactly, and at some point that diverged, and the spirituality went to the church, and then the science went a different
Yes,
path. And
that's right.
I wonder around what time that was.
Well, they say it's him with him.
Yeah.
And so he's the last, you know, mystic. He's the last wizard. So previously, as I like to say, you know, like people will trash like ketamine or something like that it's so synthetic or has so disconnected from nature, you know, that kind of talk. But I was like, really, like what I call, you know, the Harry Potter years of Western culture,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that go, you know, pretty much up to that point.
Right.
You know, so then Isaac Newton supposedly is, you know, so he's like this incredible genius, right? Who's a deeply spiritual human
Right.
being. So his inspiration, his insight, like that, he would never doubt, you know, that he learned it from his relationship with the spirit.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that would be an ignorance to
Right.
say that's not true.
Right.
And so they say that, you know, so 25% of his writings were science. So apparently like he invented like calculus and optics and I mean major shifts in our mathematical understanding of measuring the world. To such a degree in coming up with methods and ways with calculus and mathematics that you could start to measure things that we didn't know we could measure. And coming up with the algebra and the calculus, like how can you actually map it out and extrapolate and do all these things. So because of his ability to measure things in that way, it was really like the break point. Like it was from that point on, they said, well, now, you know, we can just count on the measurements.
Right.
Like he figured out how to dial it in. And so that was the kind of they use him as the, like, one of the major points of like, this is when it started.
Right.
But then, the strange thing is that 25% of his writings were dedicated to that. I say 75% of his writings were dedicated completely to spirituality.
Right.
So then those, were not as interesting or exciting or not as profitable. Like there was also
Right.
within those mechanisms and those breakthroughs, the path of the eagle of like, if we really put our logic and reason focus together, we can learn things that, can really move things along in terms of, building machines and, all those possibilities. So there was also like there was a technological advantage, and it kind of like, even though he learned those things, it appears from his spiritual connection, the other ones just,
Right.
forget about that. We have the machine. Like, we don't need that. Why are we wasting our time? We could be doing this. And so that was, somewhere in that time frame. They had already, that's the science breakaway. I mean, obviously the Western culture, by the time they came to Peru, we were already technologically much more advanced,
Right.
than the people that were living in Peru, at least in terms of, they say
The
steel and
material
guns,
world.
the material
right,
world.
right, yeah.
There's a UCLA, biologist, Jared Diamond, his book Guns, Germs, and Steel.
Right,
People
yeah,
exploring this topic, like how did it come? But the idea that somewhere along those lines is when they started focusing on the measurement, but even into the 1800s and 1900s, and then all the way to Albert Einstein, these people were still talking about the mystery and the mystical as being very near and dear to their hearts, and in no way in the way of the advancement of their knowledge.
Right.
Albert Einstein, that's how he spoke.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So then it just became, distasteful or inappropriate, to keep talking like that. And so now we're kind of in this in-between place.
Right.
But during that same time, and that's what I bring up in the book, it's like the scientists who are focusing on the mathematics, building off Isaac Newton's work, are the ones that are, proving quantum entanglement and the existence of black holes.
Yeah.
And, exploring quantum
The
physics.
spooky
and,
stuff.
Huh?
The spooky
The
stuff.
spooky stuff.
Yeah.
So then
Exactly.
it ended up back there again.
Yeah.
At the Pachacuti. And they're saying the spooky stuff, like the quantum entanglement, is like key to, I'm not a genius, I don't understand this stuff, but this is key to the quantum processing and the artificial intelligence. So now at the end of the Pachacuti, the artificial intelligence is born. Like, this is a reality. This is a very interesting phenomenon. Like, now that's what's happening.
Right. That's like another element that we don't even know where it's going to go.
Right.
Just
It
like
speaks to this
internet. When
new-
the internet came online, it's quantum leap, and I feel like we're at that.
It's-
We're at this
this new
stage
one,
again.
some
you
quantum
know.
leap of who knows what. So, but we know still that without the song, without the root,
Right.
the internet is not enough. So people are getting, separated by the screen and following these mental rabbit holes and forgetting about their biology of their body, that they need people and they need social interaction and community for their health and well-being. And if they don't, love their kids, like, it doesn't turn out that well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so, according to the prophecy, now we're at the period of the coming together of the
Right.
eagle and the condor.
Right.
So, I think in a lot of
It's
ways,
the opportunity.
as a doctor, I mean, you're an MD, but you're also a curandero.
A
So, like,
shaman.
you're literally like the actual physicalization of the
prophecy.
eagle and the condor, right? In a way, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I'm one of the people that's like, yes, I'm living that a little bit. Like, that's my experience. And so I guess it is unique. And there are other people like me. There are other doctors that are doing it and stuff, and other people mixing the frameworks. But yeah, I think I have a unique perspective in that world. And so I try to bring that perspective to, for example, to the psychedelic therapy world. I try to tell them about what I'm learning in curanderismo and traditional ceremony, and so some people, there's issues around that, and political thinking around that, and is that okay or is that but my goal is to help move things along.
Do you feel like an ambassador in
A
both
bridge.
ways?
Yeah,
Kind of.
I do. I don't know. And then and as an ambassador, not everybody accepts me on both sides of the bridge.
You have friends and enemies on both
friends
sides.
and enemies on both sides.
Yeah.
So that's the role. But I do feel that way, I guess. And I, when I went to Peru and discovered that, I really realized, wow, I want to be a bridge, and I need to really develop this side of the bridge. Like if I'm gonna be a bridge, I have to at least get somewhere with this side.
You mean the what?
Peru, the Amazonian.
The Amazonian.
I was already a doctor at
Right.
that point.
Right.
I was already a doctor, but the medicine world for me was frustrating. I wasn't satisfied personally for what I wanted to express, there. And so then when I got to Peru and saw, met Ricardo and the Shipibo tradition and worked with him, it was a part of me that I was able to express, that was like very important. And so then I dedicated myself to that, I lived there. We were in a healing center, you guys were, then we have the movie, we were there living it deep. And of course there's people that go further with it and they have their family line and, so they're more immersed, but at least, I took it far.
Yeah.
And, so I tried to learn what I could learn and continue to learn. And I'm interested in learning and love learning from the ancestral wisdom traditions and love promoting the value of it, the dignity of it, the practical value of it. Like it's one of my goals. And partially like driven by my own personal, that as a Latin American person, as a mestizo person, as an immigrant to United States family, born in United States, there's a desire to want to bring some dignity to the fullness of, it's like, well, I'm not just Spain or whatever, or American. Like maybe it's just it's only this much, but I have enough of this that I, that it hurts me when I see them discard this and disregard this and forget this and it's worthless and it's no good. And they're already doing that enough just being from Colombia, so you hear enough of that. So just there's a desire to like push for more wholeness. Like we should be respecting across these different areas. And that's important to me personally, and then on top of it, the desire to be involved in healing work and just saying like, oh, wow, as a doctor, I can do this, but it's not really, it's not, there's some other part of it that I want to touch into that seems to have dropped off somewhere in the Isaac Newton days.
Right.
The old doctors, they were still part of this, holistic, so now there's integrative medicine. And I went to the fellowship and they're like, okay, mind, body, spirit, so it's been coming up, again, in the same period of time, that just came to my mind, but it's true.
Right.
The U of A Center for Integrative Medicine, Andrew Weil Center for Integrative Medicine, developed in the 90s, and then ended up influencing the development of other integrative medicine programs at UCLA and everywhere else. So the idea of that there, and why? Because there was a need, there was something that wasn't getting addressed.
Right. Yeah.
I have a follow-up song question. Well, actually, it's a two-part. The name of your new book is The Medicine Song. So part of the question is what prompted that name, and then the other one is, did you have that moment where you connected with the song and you were like, there's something there? And what was that? And when that happened?
The first time that I went to a ceremony in Peru, I had experienced I've been to a little bit of Native American ceremony in the United States, not much. And so we had some exposure, but also growing up in Catholic Church, like, the song and the spiritual song, I was inspired by that. I enjoyed that part of church. singing and from the heart and
Yeah, yeah,
really
yeah.
feeling it, you know. So it was part of my life, and my dad was into that, and liked, you know, opera, you know, like, so like
Absolutely.
then he was really a big opera fan, and then we would go to church. So that idea that the song was connected to the spirit, not just like, and you know, there's a huge, like in America, right, the like the gospel music versus the,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah.
the soul music, like that
Right.
departure, right? Like they were like, it was from spiritual tradition that these people learned to sing like that.
Yeah.
And then that was
Right.
like they were getting, you know, uh condemned for stepping into secular music. Like, oh, music is spiritual. You don't
Right.
sing from your
Yes.
heart
Yeah.
for this person to make money. Like that's a dirty thing. And so, but then like the fun of music and this kind of blend of like, okay, well, it's not always, you know, and sometimes it's just it can be fun. So I had exposure to
Yeah,
that, and
yeah.
I never, like what we were talking about before, like for me, I never didn't think that music was magical and powerful, and I think I always kind of felt that and believed that. But then in Peru, like to see like this advanced like
Right.
metaphysical technology
Yes, yes.
that like, whoa, they know what they're doing, like they're trying to do, he just tried to do it and he just did it,
Right.
you know, like, oh my god, there's another level of learning about the songs, the way we were just saying, that can penetrate all these dimensions. But then now, like, to really try to be an advanced practitioner to where you could try to use that, you know, capacity to help move energy,
Right.
you know, within people, or support them in a way that it's going to help them do what they're trying to
In a
do.
more intentional way rather
Yeah.
than a more passive way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
In a more intentional way, and that ultimately that would be considered really like a scientific.
Right.
So it's like like advanced to that level of study.
Mm-hmm.
So like, okay, the scientists are have their reputation because they dedicate so much time, you know, and they really study it. But then these other guys are really studying it, you know.
Right.
So it's like, oh, I'm a doctor. Oh,
Right.
you know, I went to some big universities and I was there watching them. I was like, whoa, this level of discipline, I have not seen it
Yes.
outside of those settings.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
I heard
So-
from somebody who teaches Shipibo language, where the way she put it is in the Shipibo medical model or healing model, the song is the highest form of poetry
Yes.
and also very precise.
And it would even, you could even take it a step further, and we're trying to understand and interrelate things, that it's also could be considered a prayer,
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
you know.
Yes.
So like it's not cut dry like Western medicine language textbook kind of
Right.
situation. It's like such an advanced level of
Going through all the
poetry.
dimensions.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Yeah,
it's
that's incredible.
embracing and engaging the multiple dimensions of you know, so the physical,
Bringing it all
the
together.
mental, the emotional, and the spiritual,
Yeah.
and the mystical, and the relationships that include, you know, nature's role in our understanding these mysteries. So letting the nature guide us to understand. So the dietas, and trying to really study to go through intuitive, you know, mystery school training the way they do, and the, you know, the whatever, all the different, the monks, and
Yeah.
that you would dedicate yourself to certain kinds of techniques and practices that would help develop your intuition through mystical guidance.
Right.
Yeah.
So then this would be asking the nature to be the lead in that. So then medicine song is like for a lot of different reasons, but one of the reasons that I, you know, just a simple thing, when we were trying to make our court case, you know, and so then they say, because within the Western legal system, like you have to call it a sacrament. You know, I'm not saying that it's not wrong to call it a sacrament, but you know, there's some people who don't like that. You know, it's a Western religious term. You know, and that's what it is.
Right.
And so, but it's, you know, Western legal system. So, okay, it's a sacrament, and we understand what they're trying to say, that the sacrament is, you know, what we take, and it helps us to commune
Right.
with the divine, and that it's sacred, and that's part of a sacred ritual. So we, you know, I am fine with that. But then that you weren't allowed to call it medicine.
Right.
That if you call it medicine, you might get in trouble with the law, because then you're making it look like, oh, this is a medicine for healing and for therapy, and
It has not
that's
been FDA approved.
it's not been FDA approved, and medicine is for that category.
Right.
And so then, like in the Western modern framework, like that's what medicine means.
Right.
But then and so then I've been arguing that, because, I was like, well, that's kind of offensive, because here we are in the Americas, where it's been called medicine, like in all these different languages forever. So like my answer to them is like, hey, welcome to America. Like, I get it. That's a little awkward. Yeah, I've been to other countries and it's a little awkward, some of the things, but you learn something new. And so they call it sacred medicine, spiritual medicine. So then it's like, it's okay to talk about spiritual healing and spiritual medicine, like that holistic level, that it's okay to talk about the influence of those things. And so then in the indigenous traditions, like they call all of that is medicine.
Right.
And so they call, like, in fact, all spirituality is medicine. And so then that's one of the take-home points, is like, really at the root, spirituality should be therapeutic. Like that's
Which a lot of people go to church and they find a lot of peace.
Well, that's so then one of the points that I'm talking about in the book is like that. How can we tell if we're trying? One of the issues around bringing spirituality back into the society is like, oh, the charlatanism and all the belief systems, and you don't know. So how do who they says, I'm aligned with the spirit. I'm the one that knows, I have the alignment with the spirit. So I'm saying, well, if you're aligned with the spirit, then I would say that it should be demonstrate itself through that effect on your mental health, your physical health, your emotional health, your spiritual health, and your relationships.
Yes.
Yeah, fruits of the spirit.
Fruits of the spirit.
Yes.
The fruits of the spirit. That's how we'll know, right?
Exactly.
That's from the Bible.
That's right.
So then now we have all these scientific ways to evaluate that. And they could be a little bit overly abstract or wrong, but a lot of it is kind of universal, Like it's not such a struggle there's a lot of cultural things that maybe don't apply here or there, but saying somebody's depressed in Ukraine or anxious in the Amazon, it's like, it's okay. People are like, yeah, you're describing their nervous system, like how it's working. And so things that nourish, our well-being at that level, like meditation or prayer or going to church. But some people are going and it's hurting them.
Yes.
So we can evaluate it in those terms. Like, oh, I don't know if that's a good spiritual practice for you.
Right.
Because it's harming you.
Yeah.
So I think we need to evaluate. They're telling you that they're connecting you to the spirit, but I would say be careful, because these other elements are going down.
Yes.
So
Right. If you're not experiencing an advancement in your well-being, then it's easy to conclude, or safe to conclude, that that's maybe not the right direction.
That they should at least
Whichever way
consider
you
a
go.
reevaluation.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so then that's the point. So then in that same sense, so then now it's okay to talk about the medicine of the ceremony.
Right.
They say that's a medicine ceremony. They say that's a medicine man. Let's say that's a medicine woman. They say that's a medicine story.
Right.
They say that's a medicine song.
I love that.
That song is to promote spiritual healing, holistic healing. That's what it's for.
Yeah.
And so then that we have a right to express that. So that's what I call a medicine song. And then without disrespecting the FDA and all these, the reasons why that side of the argument, we get it, So I'm not saying, but I'm saying if a spiritual practice nourishes your well-being, then we call it spiritual medicine.
Right.
And so then
That's an amazing way to put it, because it does not exclude anything. Because anything that actually brings that can be a spiritual practice, and there's no one way to do it, right?
Yes.
So it's really amazing that
That's universal spirituality.
Yes, it's all inclusive.
So we can use the health to guide our
As a
universal
measurement.
spirituality.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So then that's the idea. And so that's and the beauty is that now together, the whole world with the internet, we can compare notes and tinker around and say, hey, okay, the physical health. can we agree that the physical
Yeah.
health is getting better? You know,
Right.
the blood sugar, the sodium, the this, the bone, is it, coming together? The emotional, that there's like, well, we're learning a lot together, and we can kind of say, yeah, this person's mood according to this questionnaire is actually linked to like their inflammatory markers in their blood. Like it's not
Right.
just,
Stress,
Science is catching
cortisol,
up.
right? Yeah.
Yes, yes.
and so then also the mental, the psychological, and how they're functioning, and you can relate it to the MRI, the EEG, and it's not perfect, but we're learning a lot. And then the spiritual well-being, that now there's a lot of validated questionnaires that are exploring this topic, and the psychedelic research has been one of the leading areas to demonstrate that.
Yeah.
Right.
Because people are having spiritual experiences regularly during these therapeutic interventions.
Yeah.
So then they say, oh, well, don't bring the spirituality up into here, come on. It's like, well, I'm just saying, it's like, it's showing up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's showing up because why? Because the ceremony or the healing is about helping somebody reconnect to this sense of belonging and this interconnectedness, that they've been too separated out
Right.
from that. And so then we have to help them find out what they find sacred, so we use the medicines to help us understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a question for you. So one of the cornerstones of the Shipibo tradition is the dietas, right? So
Yeah.
that's a period of time where where one abstains from certain foods, certain behaviors, kind of goes into isolation, communes with a plant. And that's where, at least personally, that's where I've really received the most healing and the most in-depth, I guess, intuitions and spiritual learnings have been through the dietas for me. And then I also look at Western culture, and people used to fast back in the day, and it's a kind of a similar concept, right? Where you would abstain from certain things, certain foods, you would commune with the spirit for a period of time. I'm wondering how, because that is like a spiritual school that helps us to elevate ourselves, right?
Right.
How do you see that incorporating into Western culture? Like, we don't have anything like in today's world that would equal like a fast or a dieta. Like, how do you see that coming back into the fold?
Well, I mean, so then we're first like trying to demonstrate the practical value of those things, so then you just say like, hey, if you don't, so it's like Ricardo says, you do the dieta, and they say, oh, you're gonna, you can learn to sing Icaros if you do the diet, and it's like, you sound so crazy, like that's so strange,
Yes.
who's gonna believe that? And Ricardo said, oh yeah, cosas increíbles, like incredible things, but like in Spanish it's more clear. Incredible means difficult to believe,
Yes.
like it's muy increíble. Whoa, I can't believe that. And he says, but don't believe me, try it for yourself.
I love that.
Right.
Like
Experience
it,
Yeah.
because that's how the mystical and the mystery school is like that.
Words don't teach.
Words don't teach it. But we already know that.
All right.
Because words don't teach you how to play the guitar. Words don't teach you how to play baseball either.
Right.
So we know this.
Yeah.
And so then these paths. So then there are, different people doing some kinds of spiritual retreats, and there are different traditions, that still exist here and there. In the Western world, like we're seeing my friend Ryle's at USC, Center for Mindfulness. So then, mindfulness, the retreats of mindfulness, and then people doing vipassana, doing a 10-day meditation retreat.
Right.
So they learned about, or yoga retreat, they learned about it at the gym, or they learned about it online, they're doing meditation at USC, and then they start exploring it further. They get around, because you don't learn it from words. So eventually you have to meet the person
Right.
that did it. And then it spreads like that.
Right. So it's not top down, it's kind of bottom up.
It's bottom up.
Right. It's
It's
people
bottom up.
telling other people about
Yeah.
this experience that I had.
That's not it. And so then
Yeah.
everyone's, that's the Western, that's the ego thing.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks, oh, what are we going to do top down to change
Right.
everything?
Yes.
But that's not how it's
Yes.
going to work, right?
That's not how it's going to
not
work.
how
Well,
it's
that's not
gonna
how the
work.
forest works.
That's
No.
correct. Yeah.
And so then the idea is to withdraw, some of the
Because
imposition
it's about
and allow it to
emergence.
emerge.
Yeah,
Right.
emergence
So that's
rather than
super important.
enforcement.
So then I really believe that. So then for me, it's not so important that we come up with a system that everyone can replicate.
Right.
The most important is in examples.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
You need
absolutely.
the example.
Be the fruit.
Yeah.
Be the fruit.
And taking it back to this the eagle and the condor, you have things like crypto and blockchain technology, which are decentralized
Exactly.
technologies, right? So it seems like the poison pill was the idea that we could centralize everything, centralize the bank, centralize medicine, centralize spirituality, right? And I really, as you know, I'm a big fan of crypto, and I really like the idea of a ledger that's spread everywhere that
Right.
is immutable and anybody can
Right.
access it. It's completely transparent. And I always made I had the idea that nature is exactly like that. It's completely
That's right.
decentralized and transactional. There's
Right.
all kinds of transactions
Yes.
taking place in nature, but there is no one top-down thing controlling everything.
That's right.
Right. And so there's a trust that I think we're coming back to, that and maybe it goes in line with in the past few years, but after COVID, people started to lose confidence in our experts,
Yeah.
and maybe people are tuning into a more kind of internal knowing or seeking for answers, right, intuitively,
Yeah.
rather than looking at that
Right.
white lab coat and saying,
Right.
that's my guy,
Right.
right?
No, it's true. There's a lot, and because too much of it was, like we had there's a guy, a part of this group that I'm connected to at ASU, and so he says, when he was going to his church growing up, he didn't feel anything.
Mm-hmm.
So they just to tell you, you're supposed to think this, you're supposed to believe this, do this, do
Mm-hmm.
that, but I don't feel anything, so it's
Right.
like it's meaningless.
Yes.
So it's lost touch with something. So then he said he wasn't until he's a white guy that's doing his PhD on sweat lodge, which people can have different ideas, but his experience is he didn't feel anything until he went to sweat lodge,
Right.
and there he felt the spirit, and it was real to him, and so this progress and this like that element was missing, and so then that element needs to be brought back into it, and so if people don't trust it, or they don't, there may be like there could be distrust from other reasons, you could be confused, but that you actually resonate,
Yeah.
and that you're able to feel that at that level, and so that it is important, and there is that trust, and so you go around these other traditional cultures in the Amazon, or we're in places where the nature is still
Right.
still quite strong, and people can live with that in faith.
Mm-hmm.
They don't need to control
Yeah.
everything,
Mm-hmm.
like manicure the entire landscape.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
You could
Yes,
go,
exactly.
some as a Colombian American from Arizona, to go to England and see like the entire, huge, in America is tons of that as well, right? Huge, the entire area is landscaped.
Right.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
there's no wild
Mhm.
nature, or just letting it run its normal thing that sustains itself.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That we don't even need. You don't have to do anything. It's like it's actually the spirit of us.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
somehow making more room for nature to breathe, and our own nature to breathe.
Yes. Absolutely.
And so I think the crypto, just on that little note, it is interesting
Yeah.
that, and this is something that there was a book that I liked. It was called, I can't remember what it's called, but it was about how the internet was this expression of nature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly.
That they said that,
And a vibration.
and a vibration. And so they were their thing was that the internet was actually made out of, it's an emotionally driven network,
Yeah.
where the different cells
Mm-hmm.
are the humans with their emotions, and then the blood vessels and the structure, the
Yes.
satellites and the
Yeah.
cables, But really, the emotions of the humans were
Mm-hmm.
driving the whole thing,
And the desire for connection.
and the desire for connection, and then there's certain natural principles
Mm-hmm.
of like an immune system that would
Mm-hmm.
develop,
Right.
or and so they talked about how if you try to like overly centralize some element of it, or overly like narrow, they used the example of Napster, you know,
Yes.
when they said, okay, now we're not going to share the music, we're not going to share, you know, we have to copy your intellectual property, and like, you know, this is, we got to tighten it up right here. It said, well, you know, what happens is it just withers and dies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something else will pop up where they keep the flow going,
Exactly.
and it
Yeah.
grows more.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and so they were just showing that this is, so that's one of the hopes, is that the nature itself, you know, will
Expressing
eventually
itself, yeah.
express itself into a more healthy
Well,
way.
and the thing is
Yeah.
too is like, you know, I had this like interesting kind of reframe with ayahuasca too, and I was like, well, you know, it'd be great if it was decriminalized or whatnot, whatnot. I'm like, something in me just had this sense, it's like she knows what she's doing.
Well, yeah,
Exactly, like where to meet us to the like to meet our readiness.
yeah. No, I mean,
You know, as
that's
in,
part of it. That's
yeah.
definitely part of it, and so there's like, you know, is it this idea of like where it's legal in Peru, it's legal in Colombia, and then here of us going through this process, and with the psychedelics here in Western culture, and this idea of like, okay, in Colombia and Peru, you know, the personal responsibility living with the nature more wild around you is, it's on you.
It's on you, it's more, yeah.
Yeah, if you die, oh, he died. You know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
hasta ahí llegó. Like,
Exactly.
that's as far as he got. You know, and so this idea of life's mystery, and there's nothing guaranteed, and you know, it could happen to anyone. And
Yeah.
so just like, so then that kind of versus the control, like that's never supposed to happen to me, and I can sue you for the
Right.
$10 million
right.
because that should never have happened to
Right,
me.
But it's
Yeah,
also
yeah.
like the Western sort of disconnect with the whole idea of death as a part of life, and like the you know, like there's a little bit
Yeah, the
more
control.
fear around it
Yeah.
versus like when you go to India and you
Right.
see that, and
Right.
and how their culture is actually dealing with this is
Right.
very different. Um,
Yeah.
but you know, on the topic of science, you know what would be cool, I think, to see a research of some sort, or some kind of a measurement of like, let's say somebody doing a diet,
Yeah.
and what changes, because that's really like merging and communing with the
Yeah.
plant spirit
Yeah. Well,
and
I
like
think,
nature,
yeah,
right?
no, I think that'd be really interesting. So we were
Has that
getting
been
into
done?
that. No, I don't think they've studied like the dieters
Could
themselves.
that be done? Could
It
that be
could be.
developed?
That's an interesting. That would be the one way to look at this thing you were talking about. Where would they come together?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the ways to come together would be to like evaluate the dieters from some Western perspective, like what
Yes.
happened to the person.
Because they
You
do
know,
this with meditators.
they do it with meditators,
Yeah.
and they're very interested, and so there's, and
Right.
it would be
Yeah.
the same parameters. You could very easily look at the same parameters. So what, you know, what are the parameters that the big ones would be like, yeah, nervous system regulation is like the
Right,
emotional
yes.
processing.
Yeah.
Like those are the big things that we want to see shift. That we say,
Mm-hmm.
okay, the spiritual connection is making it easier for you to decondition yourself from the past, from the ancestral, you know, in a way that you have more resiliency.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's easier for you to function. You finish the, you know, people do a diet, and or like a shorter diet, you know, at Niwerao, and so they, you know, 10 days or something, and they're like, well, I don't know what happened. I'm not sure what happened. But my mom called me the other day, and it didn't bother me at all. Like every time she called,
Right,
I'm
yeah.
freaking
Exactly,
out.
exactly.
And I was
yeah,
just
yeah.
like, well, I didn't react. Like something smoothed out in me.
Mm-hmm.
I love when people say they're just like, I don't know if I felt anything, and they list the whole list of things that happened, and
Yeah.
you're like,
But again, it's like you have to put, you know, the proof is in the pudding.
Right.
So it's
Yeah.
not enough to try to proselytize.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Everyone should diet. You know,
Yes,
the diet
exactly.
is amazing.
Right.
But no,
But
it's
again,
show
it's
the results. Show the
fruit.
yeah,
results.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, exactly.
So that's actually one of the themes that we want to explore in the sequel
Right.
of the movie, you know. But I wanted to ask you, because you've done a lot of diets, and I know that people have, you know, ayahuasca experiences which are very profound, and there's a lot of learning and shifts that happen. But my experience has been that like the deeper stuff is in the diets, but yet it's so subtle. So what is it about the diets, do you think, that makes it such a much more impactful result?
Well, and prolonged dedication,
Mm.
is a huge factor.
Hmm.
So that's one factor. Another factor is the ancestral wisdom part of it, of like, okay, the nature piece, that you're really allowing yourself to try this thing, to see, is this master plant, can it teach me something? Can it help me in a certain way?
Hmm.
So it's like honoring and humbling yourself to that. So, I mean,
Yeah.
if we're talking about the diets, we do have to honor the master plants. Like,
Right.
the point of it is that if you do it this way, and there's different kinds of diets in different cultures, but in Shipibo culture or our lineage or the ones we got exposed to, it's about that, and so, but again, it shouldn't be like, to me, like the spiritual materialism of like, oh, then I need to diet this plant, I need to diet this plant, I need to
Right.
diet, they're
Yes.
like, oh, when that's the one, and then I'll be I'll win the video game. And it's like, no, like, go further,
Yeah.
do more, learn more, see where you can go. And so I think the prolonged dedication is a big difference.
Hmm.
Why do
You're
people
right.
do Lent? Like,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
like, it's like, okay, you're gonna stick with it, and you're really going to humble yourself to the reverence.
Yeah.
So the reverence is saying there's something more than I know. The
Right.
spirit is more than me, is more than what I think. And so I might have all my doubts, or all my, oh, this can't work, or this, why am I doing this? But I'm going to stay through that.
Right. And I think it's also about like putting your heart into it too,
It's
right?
putting
Because I
your
mean,
heart,
you
you're
can
dedicated.
do the Lent and be like, okay, I'm not having cupcakes, I'm
Yeah,
not having this. But
right,
if that's
right,
where it
yeah.
ends,
Right.
you're not going to get much.
No, you
Out
get
of it.
out of it what you put
Right.
into it.
Exactly.
And so the dieta is like that. The people talks to you like that.
Yes.
If you want to diet like this, like, oh, la, 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 yeah, you won't learn so much.
Right.
You want to learn more, it'll diet more strict.
It's devotion.
Devotion.
Yeah.
So there's devotion, and I think that exists across most of the spiritual traditions.
Yes.
And so that it's not so common, nowadays, for people to, but they do devote themselves to other things, with some corporate strategy or whatever it is, optimizing their, business stuff.
Optimization.
Yeah, optimization. How do I get onto Instagram? They'll wake up at 5. So we dedicate ourselves to all different
Absolutely.
things, and to dedicate yourself to trying to listen to higher consciousness.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing.
A quick question there. I think, like, I just when Savani's our co-director wasn't able to join us today, but he sent some questions. So I think we, one way or another, addressed some of his questions that he wanted to ask you. But I think 2 questions, and they're rather quick. What specific mental or physical health conditions have you seen ayahuasca effectively address?
Yeah, so effectively address, as a doctor, it's like a strong term. So in some cases, so like that's why in the book I present like anecdotes. And so what does it mean? Can ayahuasca? So to me, it's not just ayahuasca, right? It's not it's how you do it.
Right.
Which what we talked about just now.
So then back to this holistic side of things, you can overly simplify and focus on the substance or the plants, but they're not even asking you to do that. The ayahuasca is, from what we understand from our tradition, from studying deeper, is like, okay, the holistic. So the holistic means, how are you carrying the medicine? How are you doing the ceremony? How are you running the diet? So it's like, you can't just say like, and it's this bottom up thing, and it's hard to standardize.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So then the fruits of the, of the spirit. So then and then how dedicated is the person to their healing?
Right.
Is that a factor? Yeah. Is that
Absolutely.
disappointing for people to hear? It's like, yeah. It's like, that's hard. To work through some things is very difficult. And we also have compassion that maybe beyond their,
Capacity.
their capacity.
Mm-hmm.
So then trying to support somebody through that. But, with all those factors going well, like we've seen it help, the classic things that people talk about with anxiety and depression and addiction and trauma. And so, yeah, I've seen it help a lot of people like that. And then like what I wrote about in the book is like, then this deep emotional healing that comes from that,
Right.
that also impacts their body and their mental health and their physical health. So there are people that have had shifts around their immune function, and other parts of their health and healing. But it's requires a lot of things. So we shouldn't talk about it like a panacea or, because it's not true.
It's not an if and then thing.
No.
At all. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And it's not true with the psychedelics either.
Right.
And so then again, it's this simplicity and the naivete that it's like, oh, we shouldn't talk about psychedelic medicine because then they're just going to try it to try to heal themselves. And we understand that, yeah, they of course they're driven to do that, but they still, you can't just be a fool and think everything's going to be fine.
Right.
You have to learn something, like you do. And so the culture we need to help people understand as much as possible and learn what they need to learn. And so there are the unethical ayahuasca healing centers that says, yeah, come on, oh yeah, we can do that, oh yeah, and then they might talk more loosely, even people close to us, but they're delivering on what they're doing, for the most part, they're helping people, so that's fine. But there's other people that will very loosely claim it and not deliver in the fruits of the spirit, like you're not seeing it.
Yes.
Same thing with the psychedelic therapy world, like, what's the dieta within that world? Well, in the case of the MDMA assisted psychotherapy, that was like the big flagship study that really kind of shifted things on the public discussion, was a 12-week therapy protocol with 3 sessions of MDMA in the 12 weeks. So they're living in that.
Right.
So that's what made the difference.
Well, it is also could be classified as a form of a dieta.
It is. I would say that it's very related.
Yeah.
That you're constantly helping them. Obviously, they're living their other life that's different.
But they're in a container.
They're in a container.
Yeah.
That's focused on staying with their process.
Right.
So people are like, well, what's the integration down in Peru? I'm like, well, you're pretty much integrating the whole time.
Right.
Like, it's not like we go to ceremony and then the next day you're going to get in your car and go to work. It's like you're just there. Like, that's all everyone's doing 24 hours a day.
All right.
So have you tried that? Are you guys doing that up here? Like, do that and let me see. Tell me how it goes.
Yeah.
Don't tell me that we're not doing anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great stuff, man. Thank you, brother. Thank you, guys. We're out of time. Please check out Dr. Joe Tafur. All of his websites are listed here and below in this video. Also check out his new book, Medicine Song, which will be coming out on Amazon in the middle of July. And thank you very much for joining us. We hope you enjoyed it. And until next time, be well.